Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Game Hump. It is November 11th, 2015. Game Huggers is bringing you the Game Hump, and we got a three-person panel today, and I'm pretty excited about this. We're going to talk about one of Nintendo's most prized franchises. We're going to talk about Metroid, the entire series today. And joining us in that conversation is Bo. Remember Bo from a couple weeks ago when he was on?
Hey, everybody.
He says, "Hey, everybody." And new to the show is actually Matt. Matt, how you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Matt, you're new to the show, but you've been a long-time listener, first-time caller, I assume, right?
Yeah.
So what is your background a little bit? Tell the people a little bit about yourself. Don't be shy.
Well, I grew up in the Merrill area.
Oh God, no. You don't need to do this. Just tell us what games you like, maybe a movie or two or some music you listen to. Don't give us your life story. Come on, man.
Oh, okay. So it's not that long of a show.
We don't have hours.
I prefer RPGs mostly, and top-down, basically Zelda-esque games. Also, Metroid is pretty good. I guess the Metroidvania types.
We're going to talk about that term you just said, Metroidvania. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
My opinion on that.
Yeah. Movies. The original Ninja Turtles movie, not that thing that came out last year, not the one that's coming out next year or whenever. Oh, yeah. Video games.
So you said some of your favorite games are role-playing games, right?
Yeah.
What kind of role-playing games, or can you name a couple of role-playing games that you enjoy?
I played Lunar Legend, which was Lunar for the GBA. I've played a little bit of Golden Sun. I've played through a bit of Lunar. I played the Lunar Dragon song that came out on DS, and talk about killing a series.
Yeah, that's not a very good game.
Yeah.
Use stamina for in-game overworld sprinting? What?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Or switch between that and getting experience points and collecting items and
What
yeah.
horrible game.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's not good. I loved the first two Lunar games on the Sega CD, and then they were remade for the PlayStation. Those are really impressive RPGs. More traditional for sure, but they offered so much story and so much character development, and the music was just awesome. I can't believe they followed it up with that DS game. That was just crap. That's really disappointing. So, okay, we're here to talk about Metroid, though. Sorry to get off topic there, folks, but Metroid. What would be your first experience, Bo, with the Metroid series?
My first experience was with Metroid on the NES.
And what did you think of that game?
Well, I was a little kid, and I liked robots, and I thought the main character was a robot who shot shit, so I absolutely loved it. I mean, in retrospect, that's obviously not what it is or what it's about, but it was one of my first forays into the platform and video game world, besides like Mega Man and Dragon Warrior. But my first Metroid experience itself was with Metroid for the NES, which I liked so much that I got Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy. So, yeah, it was the original Metroid that actually sent me off on my Metroid love.
That's pretty awesome. How about you, Matt? What was your first Metroid experience?
Actually, Metroid 2 introduced me to the entire series. My cousin had it for Game Boy. I started playing it. He had the save file right at the end. So I got to see the Queen almost right away and was not aware of the rest of the game until I started a new save on it. And I don't know, I just fell in love with it since that. And then as soon as I could, I went online, learned more about it, learned about the original one, learned about Metroid or Super Metroid, and just wanted to see what else they were coming out with.
So what year was your experience with Metroid 2?
God, sometime in the 90s.
Okay, so that was all right.
I think that was when Game Boy was out. Like, that was the only handheld Nintendo had at the time.
Metroid 2 came out in 1991. So it could have been early 90s. Do you think it was before or after when Super Metroid came out on the Super Nintendo, Matt?
That's hard to say because I didn't even know what was going on with the game. Like, I didn't even realize at the end of the game when I did beat it under the 2 hour time limit that the character that became a girl was actually the same character. I didn't even know what to think about that at the time.
It's like thin pizza, right?
I was actually thinking that earlier today.
So, it's a terrible inside joke that we'll tell you someday. That's It's interesting. Metroid 1 on the NES was my very first experience as well with it, and this was a time, and I just brought it up, and I don't know why I forgot it right away, but hey, Metroid 1 came out in '86 in the US, and I probably played it around 1988 or 1989, most likely '89. We didn't get our NES until '89, but I remember playing it at my aunt and uncle's house beforehand, and at the time, I was very interested in like science fiction and sci-fi movies, and so I had just seen Aliens, and that scared the living shit out of me. And when you first play Metroid, you get this sense of just hopelessness and alone. Like there is no goal. Like Super Mario Brothers is one thing where it's like you go left to right, you beat the levels, whatever. And I didn't play a lot of Zelda before I played Metroid because I was more interested in side scrollers and not necessarily top-down RPGs or action RPGs or anything like that. So when I got into Metroid for the first time, it was like this eye-opening, terrifying. Like this felt like I was having nightmares about it when I was playing it because you play it and you get to these spots and you fight these bosses and you're just lost and you have no idea where to go and you unlock items and you start to gain abilities and all this stuff and it just starts happening and before you realize it, you've been playing for hours and hours and hours and it was one of the first experiences that I had like that where it's really like it doesn't give you any clue as to where to go because honestly, right when you first start the game, you don't have to, but you probably should go to the left to get the ball ability right away, and that's just totally against all instincts back in that time when you were playing games and stuff, trying to go from left to right all the time. And I think that's a huge thing. That's why I instantly fell in love with that game. It was creepy. The secrets that you found just felt like you were just completely pointlessly trying to shoot or roll into a ball and drop the bombs and try to get up a wall, and it's like this is so pointless, it's never going to work, but finally you get it timed right and you're over this thing and you're going through the wall and it's like this shouldn't be happening, how is this happening? And it was like this open world and it was creepy and it had aliens and it was just amazing at the time and I absolutely fell in love with it. The very first one on the NES was awesome.
It was definitely one of the first games that had an emphasis on side-scrolling with exploration. Because it wasn't all side-scrolling. I mean, you had some top-to-bottom vertical scrolling as well. There were quite a few like connected hallways, and then you would go from this area through a hallway, and then you would have a huge vertical area that you'd have the platform to scale to go up or even to go down. So, but it was a huge interactive and connected world that was blocked off until you found something to get you further, which really focused on the exploration of it, which is really cool for a game back in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very unique, and it felt very different than anything else I'd ever played before that. I don't think I actually wound up owning that game or even beating that game until probably after Metroid 2 came out, and that was around 91 or 92. I remember Metroid 2 coming out, and I saw it on the Game Boy, and I did not own a Game Boy, not until much, much later. I wasn't really into handhelds even that much then. If I saw a kid at school that had one or something, I'd be like, oh, that's really cool, can I see that? But the screen looks so blurry, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever get into this. But when I finally did wind up getting it, and I finally discovered in a Nintendo Power that Justin Bailey code, now that was awesome. That was a very cool thing to be able to play through the game as Samus, basically just completely maxed out in a bathing suit. I mean, my God, a 12 or 13-year-old boy playing that for the first time is like, holy shit,
Yeah, for boys coming of age, that was like the thing. And I think that actually started a whole wave of a whole wave of issues, really. But I mean, having I mean, first off, it deviated from the norm, right? That everybody always thought that Samus or the person in this suit was a guy.
Yep.
And until you got that secret ending, or until somebody spoiled it for you, every single person thought the main antagonist or the main hero in the game was a male.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I
then,
thought that.
I mean, even in Metroid 2, if you never played Metroid 1 or didn't know the ending of Metroid, and played Metroid 2 and you didn't finish it fast enough with a high enough completion percent, I mean, there is nothing to indicate that, hey, well, it's a chick in a suit. Because when you died in Metroid 2, at Metroid 1, you just kind of went
Yeah.
and broke up into pixels. And in Metroid 2, when you died, you sort of phased out line by line.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like Super Metroid, when you died, that you actually got a hint that hey, I'm playing a female main character instead of a male main character, like almost 99% of other games would have me be playing.
Right. Yep.
So, um, and then of course you have the whole bathing suit and long exotic hair and stuff like that, which was a step forward. I think it was really good, but it triggered some things in certain people that they just didn't um, like the
Yeah.
objectifying of women in bathing suits. But that's a whole other thing. I mean,
I don't. There's like the God of War nudity codes, or the Grand Theft Auto, the hot coffee, and then like Tomb Raider, like Game Genie and Game Shark codes and things like that. I don't know if the Justin Bailey, the password in Metroid was necessarily that level, but it was. I mean, the only way that at that time in the mid 80s that they could really show off that, oh, this, by the way, this is a girl, other than putting her in like a dress or a pink dress, like Princess from Super Mario Brothers. I don't think they could really signify, hey, by the way, this is a female, just by putting her in like a t-shirt and pants or whatever.
Right.
Or even like a space suit underneath or whatever. So they had to do like a bathing suit to just kind of show off, like, oh, by the way, she's female. That was the big secret, the whole time going in, and people are like, whoa, that's really awesome, or whoa, that's really awesome. So, okay, Matt, you have told me a few times in the past that Metroid 2 is actually one of your favorites in the series, or maybe your favorite. Can you tell me exactly what the appeal is of this game? Because I gotta be honest with you, I have yet to really play it. I mean, get into it, play it. I'm not a fan.
I would have to say it's the nostalgia factor. Like, it was one of the first Game Boy games I actually played and played all the way through. I just started, like, when I started a new save, I was a little lost and like, wait, I had all these great weapons and stuff that my cousin had like gathered, and now I'm starting from scratch. So I started exploring. Like, I was even thinking about, like, I hear about people didn't like the game because they got lost easy, and today I was actually listening to a Metroid soundtrack, and I thought, what the hell, look up Metroid 2 soundtrack, and as I listened, I actually could picture the areas I was in when I heard that music, and I think that actually helped me figure out where I was when I was exploring. I mean, I know another complaint is it's a very linear game, but it actually helped kind of complete the game. Like, it still has an exploration factor, even if you're limited by the Metroids you have to kill before you can lower the lava to go even further. But it was still exploration.
Yeah, you can still sequence break in Metroid 2, Return of Samus. You can sequence break with the best of them. Shit,
Yeah.
I think you could finish the game with bare minimum items, unlike Metroid Fusion.
I remember running through the lava, getting to the last area that you could go to with like barely any health and just having to farm for it, and then you could still fight the last few Metroids and get to the Queen. But yeah, you were definitely underpowered for it, but you could still do it.
Yeah.
I think my issue with Metroid 2 is, one, I always thought the sprite of Samus was too big on the screen. I think that they did do a nice advancement on the way she looked, compared to the original Metroid. They didn't have to like just reuse that sprite again. It wasn't like Super Mario Land and Super Mario Brothers or even Zelda: Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. It was like a whole new game. I did think the sprite was a little too big, and I always have the same problems with Game Boy games where it seems really blurry when you're moving. That, along with the fact that a Game Boy is basically green and yellow or green and black. And all of the areas in Metroid games, you know, the ones that I think of as Metroid and Super Metroid, they all look different. They all have different looks and sounds and feels to it, and different colors especially. And the Game Boy Metroid 2 games, it feels like I don't have a clue of where I am because every corridor I go down is exactly the same as the last one I was in. And that's probably where I just fall off with it.
Well, graphically, they have different representations, and if granted at the time, you know, you really couldn't tell this from that on a regular monochrome green and yellow Game Boy screen. But if you happen to have a Super Game Boy and you popped it in there, I would definitely give it a try that way. I mean, I think that some of those issues should definitely be resolved. But
I think that when Nintendo had the DS and when the Game Boy Advance moved to the DS and now it's in the 3DS, they were starting to do a little series of games, and maybe it was just the Pokemon games or whatever, but they were doing these like updated versions of those handheld games. I almost think that Metroid 2 would be a perfect candidate for a remake on a handheld with updated graphics and music and things.
Oh yeah.
oh, the community's been clamoring for that for a while. A Metroid 2 remake. Oh boy. Especially after the big success that was Zero Mission. Zero Mission really revitalized a lot of stuff.
There's one guy who's working on his own Metroid 2 remake, and it's like, as far as I can tell from what I've heard, he's doing like 99% of the work, and he's got a little input here and there from others, but he's programming it, he's doing music for it, he's doing the art for it. And he's really expanded on what Metroid 2 started off as.
Do you know what? Do you have a link or a name on who's doing that? Is that going to be using the Metroid or Super Metroid engines or anything like that, or?
I think he built his own.
So is it a PC game then?
I don't know. I mostly only look up somebody posts a playthrough of it, and they were showing off like how much the guy had done. Like when I first saw the videos, he had, I think, maybe the first 2 areas complete. When they first, like the shocking ending for one of his videos was when he runs into the Gamma, and he's just like, the guy who made the video even said he was scared. He almost shit his pants because of how randomly that came out at him. So, and it's really done well. And I hate to think I think Nintendo would like shut the guy down at some point. And instead of like, hey, you made this game, why don't you just buy it, Nintendo?
Pull a Square Enix.
Square Enix?
I said pull a Square Enix like they did with the Chrono Trigger fan-made sequel that someone was working on for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad. I'm curious, Bo, what would be your favorite or one of your favorite memories in the Metroid series?
Oh shit. Let's see. I can't really. Okay, so Super Metroid. There was an ability that you could do in Super Metroid that nobody really knew about until it actually happened. There was a new item that was introduced, and it wasn't the grappling beam, which was also a new item. But there was something called the Speed Booster, which if you ran really fast in one direction for on a level field for a certain amount of time, you started going really, really fast. And of course, you could jump out of that and whatnot. But very, very few people actually thought to just kneel down directly out of that. And when you did that, you basically fucking. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
When you did that, Samus obviously kneeled. But then she was glowing, right? She was really, really glowing. And anything you did after that point, most people would either move left or right. And I'm like, I'm just going to jump and see what happens. But when you jump, you fire like a missile straight up, obliterating anything in your path until you hit a boundary wall. And that was probably the first, whoa, things just got real moment for Metroid games for me. Another one is actually from the same game, um, and that's when you're fighting, you're in the final boss battle against Mother Brain, and two things. You think you beat her, but you haven't. She goes to her final form, which is Mother Brain T-Rex,
Yep.
and that baby Metroid comes and saves you. And you get the Hyper Beam, and then you're just messing with Mother Brain Zen all over, and you're obliterating her.
That is awesome. That is one of my favorite moments ever as well, is the end of Super Metroid when you're, and then, oh my God. And so you're facing, this super mother brain as a dinosaur. It's a T-Rex, like you said. And then what happens if you, like, isn't she, like, impossible, or is it?
Yeah, she has an unblockable attack that, like, drains all of your energy and pins you up against the wall.
Yeah.
And as you drop down, you're like, okay, you get back up and you try to start firing again, and she does the move again, and you're like, well, this is pretty stupid. How the hell do I get out of this? And you have like a bunch of energy tanks, right? I think you have 10, 12 energy tanks, and slowly, like one by one, you get down to you have 99 energy left out of, because each energy tank holds 99 energy or 100 energy, I think it was, and you're down to no energy tanks left, and you got your last 99 energy, and you're like, one more hit and I'm dead. And at the last time you're pinned on the wall, you basically crumple down to the ground. And Mother Brain is like creeping towards you, and she's drooling out of her mouth, like she's going in for the final kill. And then all of a sudden, this baby Metroid that you're on this entire quest to find, because it was stolen from a space station, which was the same baby Metroid from Metroid 2: Return of Samus, comes in, and as Mother Brain like goes to give the final blow, this baby Metroid just starts sucking the life energy out of Mother Brain, protecting Samus in like one of the biggest holy cow moments that I had really experienced in a Metroid game. It was amazing. It was also kind of emotional too, because when you sort of had an attachment to this baby Metroid. I mean, because it was the thing you found at the end of Metroid 2, right? And then you handed it off to scientists, to further better mankind at the end of at the end of Metroid 2. And then you found out space pirates had stolen it, and it recognized you as its mother, or so-called mother, when you ran into it in Super Metroid. And but yeah, it swoops in, it saves the day, and then as it's going in for the final kill on Mother Brain to protect you, Mother Brain kills it. And as it crumples and falls down onto you, you get probably the best weapon in video game history. And you get the Hyper Beam, where you're all rainbow and prismatic, and every shot that you fire just completely obliterates anything in its path. I mean, that whole end sequence, I mean, besides the Shine Spark, which is what that little speed boost duck and fire up the rocket missile thing was called, that's probably my single greatest moment in a Metroid game, for sure. I know.
It is absolutely out of this world. That whole ending sequence is so cinematic and so wonderful. It's like, and when I played through that, it was like everything like you had said, when the baby dies, I was like, oh no, like what the hell? And you're pissed off because of what's just happened, and then Samus turns like invincible. Like nothing that Mother Brain does hurts her anymore, and every shot she fires is just wow, wow. And the music, it goes from scary boss music to this Metroid anthem while you're fighting. And it was just like, it was like all the momentum of the battle had shifted in your favor, and it's like, you're not gonna lose, kill, kill, kill.
Yeah.
You do it all, and then you get the great ending, and it's like, good God. I mean, that ending, along with the amazing experience of that game, it's hard to top that with just about anything. So I'm like, Super Metroid is my favorite Metroid experience. It's so wonderful that I've even actually, like, and just when we were talking about games here, I brought a couple out here. The original Metroid that we were talking about was my first experience. And then one that I'm recently starting to play through is Super Metroid Zero Mission on the Super Nintendo. It's a reproduction.
I've seen that.
It's basically a little bit of mix of the first Metroid game, Zero Mission, that was redone on the GBA, but it was done using a modification on the Super Metroid game itself.
Yeah.
So it plays like Super Metroid, but the level layout is like Zero Mission. It has all of the moves and stuff from Super Metroid as well. I think it has a few extra ones. I believe there's like a special type of jump or some kind of a expanded version of the jump. I'm not really sure. I haven't gotten too far in it, but it's actually really excellent. It's a good reproduction if you're into that. But it's like I am. I'm always looking for more games, and Super Metroid's one of the best Super Nintendo games there are. So if there's more games out there like it, I'm interested in playing it. So
I've heard of a few hacks actually. I can't think of their names, but I started looking into. I saw like the Super Metroid endings and stuff, and then I saw these other ones, mostly the TAS playthroughs of them, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I didn't know they made this. Like somebody made this hack. I didn't know somebody made this hack. So I watched a little bit of them, and it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but unfortunately, I have not played all the way through Super Metroid, so I'm not very familiar with the terrain of it.
So,
And
Matt, I posted a link in the chat here that is basically that final Mother Brain fight from. It's very similar to the end of Metroid 1. It's definitely something. If it's not on your playlist and you don't have the time really to go and play it, just watch this final video.
I've seen the ending of Super Metroid.
I'm watching it right now actually, and I'm getting goosebumps and reliving that entire moment from my childhood. Because when it starts playing Samus's theme, and it's got like the trumpets and the boom, 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 and you're fighting. Fuck, dude, I can't.
Well, I've seen it before, and like the first time I saw it, I'm like, "Are you kidding? That's the baby Metroid from the second one." And it just sacrificed itself, and you can feel the rage in Samus as she's like blasting Mother Brain with her own beam.
Isn't that crazy?
You can feel it even when you're just watching it. It's just like, kill her, kill the bitch. You're just happy to see her go down.
That's so crazy. So okay, we've jumped right into this here, and we've talked about the very first 3 Metroid games as being somewhere in the middle there of what our favorite experiences were, or even our initial experiences with the Metroid series. But after 1994, when Super Metroid came out, Nintendo decided to wait 8 whole years to come out with a new Metroid game, and that was in the form of 2 games, one for each of their the consoles and the handheld market. That was Metroid Prime, that was released in 2002 on the Nintendo GameCube, and Metroid Fusion on the GBA. Now, I like both of these games. I believe Metroid Fusion even has an introduction where it says Metroid 4, or does it say Metroid 3, or does it say Metroid 4?
I believe it says 4.
But yeah, because Super Metroid was Metroid 3. But I think that's really interesting that they would wait 8 years after Super Metroid to come out with a new, Metroid game after how successful it was, and pretty much, everyone that I've ever listened to reviews-wise say it's such a good game and such a great experience. I mean, we got like 3 Donkey Kong Countries after that, and a whole bunch of other sequels, and a bazillion Mario Parties. It's funny that they're just deciding to take it so slow with the Metroid series. But after that, in 2002, it actually really started to blow up. We got Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime. Do you guys have any reactions or experiences to when you first played Metroid Prime for the first time?
I was sort of put off by Metroid Prime at first, but as soon as I landed on the planet after the intro, actually during the intro when I was playing it, I was turned off the whole idea of a first-person Metroid game. I'm not sure I'm gonna like this very much at all.
Yeah, me too.
But I bought it on the namesake of, oh hey, it's Metroid. So let's see what happens here. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I have a subpar gaming experience. And as soon as I landed on the Space Pirate Station, and I was just playing around, and you make your way through, you fight a boss, and you have an escape sequence, and you get damaged and start losing your abilities, and you're back to square one. And then landing on the planet, I think it's Talon 4 is the planet for Metroid Prime. all of a sudden I had that same exact feeling again that I had when I played the original Metroid game. I had no idea where I was. I had no power to speak of, and I was surrounded by a place that was completely unfamiliar with these weird-ass looking enemies that I had no idea how to take care of. And I was already confused because of the controls. Not that I didn't acclimate to them really well, but it all added to the sense of, hey, I'm alone, I'm stranded, and I have no idea what's going on, but I'm going to go out here and explore anyway.
That is actually pretty much how I felt too. I enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed playing it. I'm terrible at first-person shooters. I'll completely freely admit that. I'm just I can play some of them all right. I like old school ones a little bit better. Like I'm just no good at it. I don't know if it's the hand-eye coordination or what. I'm not a big first-person shooter person. But when I first got to play it, I felt a lot of the same things. It had some of that same ambiance and creepy feelings, and the music had some familiarities in it too. Metroid Prime I actually was really impressed with. Graphically, it looked amazing. I know that it had came out around the same time as the initial Halo game for the Xbox, the original Xbox, and people were making those comparisons like right away, saying, "Oh, it's no Halo," and it's like it's not trying to be Halo at all. It's trying to be Metroid. I mean, it's a single-player first-person adventure. It is not a first-person shooter. You're not just running around blasting up bad guys all over and capturing the flag. You're actually playing Metroid in a first-person view. And I thought they did a really good job with that. I thought it was Retro Studios actually developed that game for Nintendo. And before Retro Studios became Retro Studios or whatever they're called now, they were actually the guys who developed the Turok series for the N64. Not to say that those are amazing games or anything, but it's really cool to see that Nintendo trusted them to make a new Metroid game, and they actually wound up putting it together really, really well.
Yeah. I actually never got into the Metroid Prime games because of the first-person point of view. I just kind of took that stance as like I don't feel like it's a real Metroid game and whatever. But in recent years, like I've listened to reviewers talk about it, and like they show gameplay of it, they talk about how much they enjoyed it, and I started realizing, I blew it off, and I really shouldn't. And thanks to a friend, I now have an opportunity to at least play the first two Metroid Prime games. I'm thinking about it, but it's not something I've set in stone. But I've actually gotten to appreciate the story and the lore behind it. I don't know. It'll be interesting to try it out at the very least. Otherwise, go ahead.
If you've got a Wii, which I think you got a Nintendo Wii, you actually have the opportunity to find Metroid Prime Trilogy. That's the whole trilogy with updated widescreen graphics, and you can use the waggle controls to play it. And most times I really despise the waggle controller, but I thought, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I thought Metroid Prime 3 actually controlled really well on the Wii.
Yeah, it felt a hell of a lot more natural using a nunchuck and a Wiimote to control Samus and fire your cannon and all that kind of stuff instead of using a controller. It felt a lot more immersive because you were, I don't know if those that are watching or listening actually played the Metroid Prime games at all, but it's not your typical like first-person view while you're going through this game. You're actually looking through the visor of Samus's helmet, and you have like your missiles and everything on the bottom right-hand corner. You have your visors and things that are on the bottom left-hand corner there, and you can switch between all of this. But the screen, while you have a nice wide view field of vision, actually mimics what Samus's visor looks like. And it was much more immersive having a nunchuck and a Wiimote than just having a basic control. I think it added a lot of depth to the game.
That's actually one of the things that the reviewer I watched was talking about. He was explaining how he enjoyed playing the trilogy so much, and that's actually what got me kind of curious to play it now, because it's one thing to play, like I've enjoyed the Game Boy or the GameCube controller, but after trying other controllers, it's kind of lost its charm for me, for most games anyway. And when the reviewer was talking about the Wii Motion stuff, I'm like, that actually sounds more fun than what it initially sounded like. So that's actually what's gotten me at least curious to play it now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the first person adventure route that they went was kind of looked at in a negative light, and then when people actually got to try it out, it wound up being very, very successful for them. It's interesting. It's an interesting idea, and it made sense, honestly, when you're thinking of the the era of gaming at the time, where everyone was into first person shooters, into 3D gaming. It was like the way to go. For a long time there, and then that didn't slow them down at all when Metroid Prime came out, because after that, Metroid Prime 2 came out in 2004, and Metroid Zero Mission also was released in 2004. So you had the first 3 Metroid games came out of the span of 8 years, and then 4 Metroid games came out in the span of just 2 years, between 2002 and 2004. It's kind of amazing that they were just pumping them out at one point there. But Metroid Prime 2 Echoes on the GameCube, do you have any opinions on that, Bo?
Absolutely disgusted with that game. They started something new and wonderful with Metroid Prime, right? And they kind of got a negative hash on them from me just because of the interlinked capability between Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime. Really, the two games weren't related at all, but you could get special suits and stuff. I didn't really like. I should rephrase that. I was put off because of the fact if I wanted everything in the game, I had to buy another game and accessories in order to connect the two together to do things. I wasn't a fan of that in the Pokemon days, back when Red and Blue first came out, and I'm still not a fan of it. Which, in another chat I hope we have sometime in the future, about Mega Man games, really put me off on the newer generation of Mega Man games.
That's like a series of chats in its own.
Oh, you bet your ass it is. Holy shit.
Same line of thinking, the amiibos.
Oh god.
If there were three franchises from Nintendo that were my bread and butter growing up, it was Zelda, Mega Man, and Metroid. Hands down. No other ways. But as for Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, I gotta tell you, when they introduced an ammo system for your basic weapons in Metroid, you lost the feel of it immediately. When they introduced the multiplayer PvP aspect of it, I lost even more interest. And then the story was absolute shit. It's like they took something out of an old storybook and tried to rehash it. Oh, here's good, here's evil. This planet is split into two through 2 different dimensions, and you got to go back and forth and use the weapons from one to be effective in the other. But you have ammo. If you run out of ammo, you are completely and utterly screwed. Completely. Plus the worlds were way too big for the backtracking, which is famous in Metroid games. The worlds were just ridiculously large, and it felt tedious to do anything in that game because you had to spend so much time backtracking, which is a part of Metroid games. But in the Prime 2 Echoes, the backtracking, you could spend a half hour trying to get to one place to get one item, and then have to spend another half hour to get back to where you were. That's just because the thing was so damn big. I'm sorry, Matt. What, you had something?
It's just there's a dark world and a light world. I enjoyed that in Zelda.
Yeah, that was great in A Link to the Past. It was wonderful. Yeah. But even A Link to the Past, you didn't have ammo for your damn sword.
No.
You didn't have ammo for your boomerang or your hook shot.
Just your arrows, and you could upgrade those.
Come on, Bungie. Nintendo.
Bungie. Yeah, I know. After that, I don't have much of an opinion on Metroid Prime 2 as well. I thought it was, it was a sequel. They went in a weird route.
You know what I thought they were trying to do? With all the comparisons to Halo from the original Metroid Prime, I think maybe they were trying to have an answer to Halo on the Nintendo side with a popular run-and-gun type of game, but they failed horribly. Because the PvP in Metroid was Nobody played it. Nobody played it at all.
It was really obvious that the multiplayer was just tacked on to make some of
Oh
those
yeah.
bummed out
Yeah.
first-person shooter fans happy, and that's exactly. It didn't make anybody happy. Most people were just kind of put off by it. And
Right.
didn't Metroid Prime 2 also have a really poor ending?
Yeah.
And you were just talking about that too.
It's just,
But you know what? Zero Mission did come out that same year, and that was a really good game. I mean, that was.
um,
Yeah.
thankfully, Zero Mission came out to completely wipe away anything that Metroid Prime 2 tried to do. The Zero Mission is quite possibly one of the, if not the most perfect Metroid game that has been released to date. It was Super Metroid, right? But the graphics were updated, the music was updated, and so with graphics being updated, it looks better. The music being updated still gave you that nostalgia thing, but the music was more crisp and it felt even better than what it did before.
Yep.
And it had some new stuff peppered into it. So even if you were a Super Metroid veteran and remembered where everything was for 100% completion in there in 2.5 hours, which I still do, by the way.
Super
Anyway,
Metroid or original Metroid?
Super Metroid.
So Metroid Zero Mission is Super Metroid?
Pretty much. Wait, no. Wait.
It's original Metroid.
It was a Super Metroid engine. I'm sorry, the Super Metroid engine.
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. It was basically like Metroid Special Edition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, was it so? It was so good. It was so amazing. And when that came out, everyone's like, "Holy crap, dude! They can do this with Metroid 2: Return of Samus.
Right?
It would be even better." And which
Yep.
sparked a whole community around Metroid 2 and wanting a remake for that, and it just never happened. Kind of like Mother coming to America, or Mother 3.
Yeah, that's gonna take forever. Oh,
But
they have released some of the Earthbound games on the Wii U Virtual Console, so at least it's getting somewhere.
yeah, it is. But yeah, if Metroid Zero Mission had not come out, I think Metroid, because the next couple of games we're going to talk about in the Metroid series are absolute garbage. If Metroid Zero Mission hadn't have come out, I mean, Nintendo would have just buried Metroid so far down that nobody would have cared if another game would have came out ever again.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have poor timing on Metroid games sometimes. Like
Oh,
I
and-
heard, Super Metroid came out at the end of the life cycle of the Super Nintendo, so it didn't do that well here. I think, or that was in Japan. I forget which one it was poor in, but
Well, 64 didn't come out until what, 2002, 2001?
The N64?
Yeah.
That was 96.
Was it really?
Yeah, that went from 96 to 2001.
Oh, I'm thinking
and-
GameCube. I'm thinking
Yeah.
GameCube.
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah.
There was a blight called Nintendo 64 that I just didn't really. Okay. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they. I mean, it's Super Metroid. Like when I finally got to see it, I'm like, holy shit! They don't need to remake this. They just need to port it. And I always looked forward to a Game Boy Advance port, but they never came out with it. And then we got Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion, which, like Metroid Fusion, I know another complaint about that was is a lot like 2, where it was very linear, but it also had this new creep factor. Like I'd almost call it a good Halloween game because of the Saiyx that came after you, and every encounter with that thing was scary.
Well, Metroid Fusion actually started going away from the traditional Metroid type of game. I mean, because everybody knows that Metroid actually spawned Metroid and Castlevania both spawned this entire like genre type of game called Metroidvania, right? That's what a basic side-scrolling adventure game is called to date, is a Metroidvania game.
Well, an
Right.
open world side-scrolling game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
And
Where
I would love to jump in. I don't want to derail you at all, but I hate the term Metroidvania. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
All right, that's cool. That's more than fair. I like it. So, but Metroid Fusion started deferring and straying from the path that was a Metroid game. And Matt, I think you can agree that the sequence breaking and the adventure aspect of Metroid Fusion just really was not there.
Yeah.
You were told where to go, you were told what weapons you could use, and you were told what to do. And then at the end of Metroid Fusion, if you got the really good ending, there was hints towards a love interest that Samus had, which was just what? No. Okay, I
Yeah.
no. No.
Yeah.
What are you
Like
doing, Nintendo?
my first playthrough of Metroid Fusion, I got through the one sequence break you can do, which was more of a, hey, you figured out how to get past this one area. Wow. Congratulations. It's the closest you're ever going to get with this game.
Right.
And I'm
And
like, wow, I wonder how, as the game said, I wonder how many people are going to figure this out. I'm like, shit, how did I do that?
it was and it wasn't bad at the time because we were so starved because that came out with Metroid Prime, Metroid Fusion did, which was in
Yeah.
that 8-year gap of Metroid games. We're
Yep.
like, oh shit, a new Metroid. Okay, I'm gonna let a lot of stuff slide because now I'm able to play as Samus again. I'm being stalked by this thing that kind of copied me, which is really cool. I mean, it makes you feel again like everything is against you and you are hopeless against this thing because kind of like in Super Metroid, the SAX was you at your strongest.
Yeah.
And Samus was so weak and pitiful again because she tripped over some wires or something and lost all of her gear. And and you were quite literally helpless, like you were at the end of Super Metroid when you were at your all powerful, but Mother Brain was still stronger and she was tearing your shit apart. You felt like that again, and you actually it was a confrontation that you had to run from if you wanted to survive, which gave you that, oh man, what am I gonna do? I have to run away. I'm all alone. I can't. This is It's a psychological thing that made the game that much better. However,
Absolutely.
when you go back and look at it's sort of like, well, okay, the worst villain you could think of is a copy of myself, which Metroid Prime series kind of went off of. I mean, but that's another thing about the Metroid Prime games. Metroid Prime itself looked nothing like a Metroid. I mean,
Yeah.
they deviated from the classic Metroid look. Now, granted, there were Metroids in Metroid Prime. However, there was uh, the main antagonist of the game, Metroid Prime, looked absolutely nothing like a Metroid.
That's weird. And that's
And but
yeah.
Metroid Prime actually becomes the main spoilers becomes the main antagonist for Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3.
Yeah.
So, which is basically Dark Samus, which is basically SAX, then X Parasite version of Samus from
What
Metroid
what
Fusion.
one thing that annoyed me with Fusion too was when you get, well, spoilers, when you go back to your ship to escape the exploding station, you find that your ship's gone, and in place you find the Omega Metroid waiting for you. And like in like I get it, 2 was a very different time when it came out, so the ability to program it more advanced was limited. But having it walk around, and then its one weakness is shooting it with your regular beam, or at least Samus's ultimate beam when she's at her most powerfulest, versus you got to pump like 50 missiles into this thing's face or back when you're back in Metroid 2. So it's just kind of like, where did that come from? I couldn't even shoot the thing with an ice beam back in Metroid 2. I had to just pump it full of missiles. And they kind of changed the rules on that. Well, that it started changing the rules for a lot of things with Metroid.
So after the GBA games, Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission, I mean, it had a pretty successful campaign on there. When they moved off of the GBA into the DS, they went an interesting route. We're gonna have to touch on it. I know. But when the DS was initially released, they had a demo with it that was called Metroid Prime Hunters that seemed to have like a little bit of promise, but it was an interesting concept for sure. But it was mainly just a demo of a couple like battle areas that you could play multiplayer wirelessly. And at the time, that was pretty much a new concept in gaming as far as handhelds would go. But the official DS releases for the next Metroid games would come out in 2005 with Metroid Prime Pinball. I have literally no experience with that at all. and then the official release of Metroid Prime Hunters that came out on the DS. And I don't even know if I ever played the finished product of that. I only ever played the demo, and it seemed all right. It didn't seem like there was anything too spectacular, spectacularly wrong with it, at least. But then the Wii, eventually, a year after the Wii came out, it got its very first Metroid game on it, which was Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. And we did touch on that a little bit before, but it's actually my personal favorite game in the series. I think it's an excellent game. I think the play controls are amazing. And I know the Wii was always like kind of mimicked, or not mimicked, but kind of mocked as a console that was generations behind in graphics and control and in music and everything. Or presentation in general being a standard definition game versus being a high definition game system. But I thought Metroid Prime 3 was one of the games on the system that actually pushed the limits further than anything I've ever seen on it. I honestly think that if you weren't paying too close attention, you could mistake this for a game that was in high definition, how good it looked in the widescreen presentation and how good the graphics were. They pushed it really far. They pushed the Wii as far as it could possibly go graphically with this game, and I was really impressed with it. Metroid Prime 3 is an excellent game.
I will have to agree, because the first time I heard the Norfair theme in Metroid Prime 3, I really wasn't a fan at first, because again, it had a lot of Halo aspects to it, and it wasn't really Metroid-ish, because one, you couldn't really sequence break in Prime 3, and you were working with the Federation in this, so you had like friends, or you had people working with you, or you were trying to investigate how they screwed up so bad. But they looked like real big knockoffs of Halo. The Federation did, and that sort of put me off. Besides working with other people in the game, or being on like a team, that really put me off. However, as did the traveling to other planets. I'm like, what's going on? But as soon, again, it was like Metroid Prime 1 all over again. As soon as I landed on a planet, and as soon as I got to the first like fire area, and I heard the Norfair theme playing, it felt really familiar. It felt good, and everything just fell into place. Because again, there was a lot of adjustment. Because Prime 3 Corruption was the first one where you had the nunchuck and the Wiimote, right? You didn't get to play 1 and 2 with the nunchuck and Wiimote until the trilogy actually came out.
Yep.
But playing Corruption with the nunchuck and Wiimote, coupled with all these other different aspects, yet again, it was shaky at first, but it fell into a groove that was more Metroid than Prime 1 or 2. And I don't really like to count 2 anyway, because it's just a sham. It built Prime 3 redeemed 2 by building on everything from the original Prime and adding what Metroid was all about.
Yep, I think it was. I was into it. I thought the graphics looked wonderful. I think it was, and I can't remember who the exact first boss you actually fight in this game, but I think it's Ridley. Is Ridley the dragon-y?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It was one of the first. I don't know if that's the first battle, but that's as far as I got the first time I played it, and I was just terrified. It was the first time in years that I had played a game that had a boss battle that was so epic and just felt like I'm fucked. Like, there's no way I'm surviving this. And it was just like you're this character who's first-person view. You got the visor, and there's these like big rocks you can hide behind, and then this dragon comes flying down. It's awesome. It's like they managed to make a 3D battle of the Super Metroid battle that I had seen when I was playing through it on Super Metroid, and they're fighting Ridley in Super Metroid. It was just awesome. I loved that battle so much, and I think there's a point where you're both falling at the same time too.
Yeah.
They did such a good job with the presentation of that battle, and you didn't feel like, and I know a lot of people like God of War, but I disliked God of War because it's all what are those quick time events where
Right.
it's like you're not in control. You think you are, but really it just says push A, and you push A, and all of a sudden, Kratos is doing all this crazy killing, and it's like, wow, I did that. No, you didn't. You just did a quick time event. Metroid Prime 3 has it where you're really aiming and you're really reacting to everything as fast as you can. And if you screw up, it's awesome. It's awful because you're about to die. But if you make it and it works, it's perfect and it looks awesome. The presentation was done so well. I really was impressed.
The first boss of Metroid Prime 3 was actually like an introduction to the game type boss. Like, here's the mechanics and here's how you can do type of stuff.
Oh,
But
sure.
the second boss in the game, you're correct, it was actually Meta Ridley, which was a rebuilt Ridley, who was the dragony type guy.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the one where you're falling down a huge shaft and like
Yes.
he's trying to kill you and you're trying to kill him, and it's that was a pretty cool thing, that whole falling at the same time while you're trying to save yourself. That was pretty cool. That
It
was a
was.
whole shit moment.
Yeah, it was done really well, and I think that was the first time I realized that Metroid Prime 3 was pretty fun. Like at
Yeah.
first I'm like, this is really, really pretty and it's really cool, but am I going to really get into this? Am I going to really get sucked in? And that battle was like, yes, this is really well done.
As I recall, with that battle, if Samus could talk, she was going to say, "You shall not pass."
Oh dear God. So anyway, 3 years after that, on the Wii as well, they decided not to do any more handhelds. Surprisingly, after Metroid Prime Hunters kind of stunted that. Metroid: The Other M.
Uh,
I
So
have nothing. I have nothing to really say about it. I remember playing a demo for it, I think, and trying it out, and I just wasn't really into it. I don't know. Some people really like it though. It's interesting. I wish Aaron would have been on this show because he said he actually really likes aspects of it. He said overall it's not that great, but playing through it was a worthy experience. I don't know.
I'm gonna jump back to your original comment of how you hate QuickTime events like God of War.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say that that's probably the reason why you don't like Metroid Other M, because
I really
Other
liked
M.
Gaiden though.
Oh yeah, Ninja Gaiden was really great, right? Team Ninja was awesome, but Nintendo made a huge mistake in franchise sending out Metroid to them to work on. I mean, I think they were on the same mindset that, hey, people can't really mess up Metroid at all. Only we can do that by pinball and stuff. Because Retro did a damn good job of it, right?
Yeah, they did.
Except for Prem 2. I don't even know if they presented that one or not. But
I think they did the whole trilogy. Yeah.
they handed it to a game company who was based whose games were extremely difficult, which I don't mind, but were based around like kind of quick time event stuff and having perfect timing, and
Yep.
more action-y type games than what the whole Metroid thing was about, which was since Metroid's type of a kind of a platformer, it was all memorization. Where's this guy going to be? Oh, I died. I know exactly where these things are going to be now, so I can plan for them, take them out, and make my way, and make progress. Whereas Other M had all the bad things from Fusion, right? Had because you couldn't use any of your weapons until somebody said you could. It had a love interest for Samus. It gave a backstory for Samus, which is nothing like what the original backstory was for her from the comics, from the Nestor and Howard comics from the Nintendo Power, which were absolutely amazing.
Yes, they were.
And it had nothing of the canon history for Samus. Canon as in actual like real timeline stuff where it actually fits, not like an ARM type thing.
well, they kind of they're trying to cut out Metroid Fusion from the timeline with using that storyline.
I think it was a pretty shitty attempt at rebooting the entire Metroid franchise with Other M.
Which is really weird.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The final boss of Other M, the bonus boss or whatever, was completely out of place and just something there to provide a little bit of nostalgia for people that had played Super Metroid or Zero Mission, because it was. I mean, if you haven't played it, you fight the Fauntoon or the Pantoon or Phantoon, whatever the hell he was called from Super Metroid on the crash ship. And it was completely out of place because, I mean, like, why is this thing here? How did it get here? And I just obliterated a bunch of cloned Metroids, and I obliterated a cloned Ridley that I saw through the entire game as a baby. By the way, I couldn't sequence break at all. I couldn't use all of my weapons because I didn't trip over anything this time. I didn't lose all my power-ups, but I couldn't use any of them because the Federation that I have no affiliation with or I don't really work with in general said that I couldn't use them. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole story pissed me off. Like, I've heard that if you take some of the gameplay, you tweak it. They basically took what made the original Metroid games good, and they translated it into 3D decently. They, like I said, improve upon it. They need to improve upon it more. But then when you think back to like where Metroid kind of got a lot of its creativity, a lot of its lore, they got it from Alien. And like you realize Samus is this strong, silent woman, and they practically modeled her after Ripley from Alien. And I was thinking about like how Ripley was throughout that movie. She wasn't weak. She spoke her mind. She stood up to like everyone on the ship, and that's basically what Samus was doing throughout most of her games. And then they throw her into Other M, and she's like, where did you come from? I can't believe you're actually in this suit fighting these beings because you act like you're a child who doesn't know what they're doing. I
Yeah.
actually saw a fan film somebody did, and it's like they modeled the Samus character that they had after the one from Other M. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Copy Ripley. Use Ripley as Samus, and you've got yourself a Samus Aran that everyone can enjoy.
I mean,
Yeah.
Samus's roots, she was a bounty hunter, right? So bounty hunters don't follow rules. Bounty hunters don't take orders. They have a bounty that they want to complete, and they do it any way they possibly can, right? It just so happens that every time Samus has a bounty, it leads to a world that has Chozo on it for some odd reason.
And Metroids. And Metroids were brought there.
Yeah. So I don't. Other besides those problems and not being able to sequence break yet again, it was so linear that it was sickening. Like you were literally on rails. Like when you could just hold up on the control stick, and you would run, and you would follow just like a path. You could see Samus on screen zigzagging in third person because you were just holding up. There were very, very few like sandbox areas where you could go anywhere and do anything. There was maybe 2 or 3, but beyond that, you hold up on the joystick and let's see where we go.
That
Because
sucks.
you couldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything else. And there was so much potential for it. I mean, it was basically a Zelda engine with Metroid stuff on it, but instead it became, Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, and that's it, on the ground.
And they kind of included a little Pokemon with his evolution that became Ridley.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't even
Nintendo
know.
and
I don't want to know.
Pokemon.
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
So it's been 5 years since Other M came out. A lot of people think that it's really like it didn't kill the franchise by any means, but it's hurt it pretty bad. Other M was not a successful game. I think it was blamed in just about every review I've ever read. But we do have a new Metroid Prime game.
No, we don't.
Well, we almost sort of do. It's a handheld DS game. It's going to be on the new 3DS. It's coming out in 2016. I can tell you a little bit about it. It's called Federation Force. It's going to be developed by a company called Next Level Games. You want to know how many Metroid games they've developed in the past?
-1.
0. Well, yeah, -1. Sure.
No. Null.
Null. It's coming up as nulls. I can tell you some of the games that they've developed in the past. They developed Punch-Out for the Wii. They've also developed Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Yeah, and they're about to do Metroid Prime Federation Force on the 3DS. At least in my opinion, looking at this, at least it's only a handheld game. I kind of, in my brain, for whatever reason, I always think of handhelds as like, yeah, they're kind of like the real thing, but not really. Like the console versions is the real games. Handhelds are just there for kind of like supporting cast. Federation Force looks like it's a spin-off. It doesn't look like it's going to be a new Metroid Prime by any means. It sounds absolutely fucking terrible. It's called Metroid Prime Federation Force. Cooperative first-person shooter currently being developed by Next Level Games for the Nintendo 3DS.
You know what it is.
The
In this,
genre's first-person shooter team sports game.
you know what it is. It in the same vein that like we have Alien and Aliens. They're like, hey, let's take something in this universe and make a new thing. Let's call it Prometheus.
Ooh.
So this is their Prometheus.
There's two things I wanted to touch on before we end up this we end this show, and I know we've been talking for a while, and I'm really glad we got this conversation out. Wow, is there music playing for anybody else, or is that just me? I think that's just me. Sorry.
You're special.
Yeah,
I got music playing. It's an advertisement that just popped up on a website I'm looking at. Anywho, the next Metroid game for consoles. Nintendo recently announced that in 2015, they said they were going to begin working on their next Metroid game. It's going to be a series. It might be a Metroid Prime game. It might not be a Metroid Prime. They're not sure. It's just going to be the new Metroid game. And the idea is that they're going to go through a 3-year development plan with the new Metroid game on a console, and it will not be available on the Wii U. They assume that because Nintendo's NX system, which is rumored to be released in 2016, it won't be available for the Wii U simply because the Wii U probably won't be around anymore after that. So we might get a new Nintendo console Metroid game in 2018. So
maybe
there's
it's
that.
Metroid Dread.
Oh yeah, maybe.
That had promise because there were allusions to that in Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 3. There were Easter eggs and things hidden throughout those games that alluded to a Metroid game in development that was Metroid Dread. Which
is that a crossover with Judge Dredd?
I don't know, but the name sounds really cool and fits with the whole Metroid series of games. Like Dread. You have a feeling of dread because you're all alone, there ain't nobody telling you what to do, and you're hunting something. Or you're trying to fight your way out from someplace to survive.
That's awesome.
Unless it's
awesome.
the dreading what kind of game they might come up with next, which the handheld coming out. Yeah.
It's going to be
already
awful.
dread it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be any good. You know, who knows? Maybe it'll surprise us and it'll wind up being really good. I don't know. I doubt it. So the one last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was the name Metroidvania. I absolutely hate the word Metroidvania. I hate that people call that a genre of games now. And I'll tell you why. Are you ready for this? The correct term for those types of games are Metroid games. Metroid.
I agree, actually.
Castlevania, or Konami, made a wonderful Metroid clone when they came out with Symphony of the Night. As much as I enjoy Symphony of the Night, it is a blatant ripoff of Super Metroid. It has all of the same ideas. They have the same save point rooms. It has the map idea. It has all of the leveling up. It has all of the items. It has the bosses in certain areas, and it has the open environments. It's basically like, and it's funny because I swear to God that the developers behind Symphony of the Night said, let's just copy Super Metroid and make that into a Castlevania game, because even the Castlevania game, Symphony of the Night itself, doesn't necessarily play all that much like a Castlevania game. You don't even play as a Belmont, you play as Alucard. The only thing that's different between the two is one's a projectile weapon with Samus, and one is a melee attack with Alucard. But yeah, I think these games are Metroid games. And I just wanted to kind of quiz the two of you, not necessarily quiz, but just ask you guys, what are some of your favorite Metroid-style games? And some people would call them Metroidvania or whatever, but like different types of games that are new, old, whatever. What are some games that are styled like Metroid that are some that you enjoy?
So if I had a pipe dream, next generation Metroid type game, I think it would really closely model, maybe not even difficulty wise, but just in general, the Dark Souls series of games. Because, and let me explain myself here. The Dark Souls series of games, you are hopeless. You are alone. There are very few NPCs, and most of them want to just take advantage of you and either try and kill you or do something. Big deal. You can sequence break. You can explore. You'll know real fast if you're in the wrong area because you'll get your ass kicked so bad. And its focus is on exploration and skill. Now, Metroid wasn't so much skill, but it was everything else that I had just mentioned. So if I could have a Metroid game on the next generation, or I could put a Metroid skin on something, I would put it on Dark Souls and be like, yes, this is a good Metroid type game. Otherwise, I would have to go with probably like Rogue Legacy as a Metroid-ish type game.
That's awesome. That's
But
awesome.
but other than that, I haven't really played anything that's like. Oh no, Axiom Verge. Axiom Verge.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one. Oh wait, that's right. That's the one that's on Steam, right? You were telling me about that.
I thought, yeah, it's also on the PSN,
Oh sweet.
and it is pretty much a Metroid clone. I mean, hands down. It looks, plays, and damn near sounds almost exactly the same. Which proves that the formula is not broken and people are willing to pay for it.
Right. That's
So
awesome.
there's no reason to really diverge from it. And to touch on your Metroidvania thing, Metroidvania is not a classification of a game. It's more of a, hey, look, Castlevania blatantly ripped off this game. So instead of calling it Castlevania, we're going to call it Metroidvania. And that spawned a whole, because there were a bunch of GBA games that were like Symphony of the Night.
Yep.
And then I think Metroidvania stuck with each and every single one of those. And then it just sort of became, oh, it's a Metroidvania. Well, really, it's a platformer with adventure aspects to it. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the GBA ones. I think there were 3 on the Game Boy Advance, and then there was 2 on the DS, and they all had that same Symphony of the Night style to it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really odd and that's another funny thing too. We could bitch about Konami for an entire episode easily, but
I think we did.
Wait, do we? Oh. But we could easily talk about why they haven't made a side-scrolling Castlevania game for any consoles as well. It's like they just abandoned that. I mean, even knowing all of them are very like highly acclaimed and highly successful, it's like whatever. But I have a couple that maybe you haven't heard of or maybe you have heard of. Matt, this is for you because you have a Wii. You should check out Cave Story. That's an excellent game. It's on everything. I believe it's on Steam, PSN, Xbox, and the Wii U Virtual Console. Cave Story is a game that is basically kind of a cutesy type graphics. It's old school style sprites and stuff like that. But it's a little kid with like this pea shooter, and you're in the middle of this like dungeon or this like cave. It's a cave, Cave Story, and it's like, oh, good luck, see you later. And there's little to no like dialogue, little to no directions. You're just gone, and you have to do this whole big, crazy, gigantic universe, underground and above ground and all over the place. It's a really good spooky game. It's that Metroid style. It's open. You can go and discover many ways to die all on your own. And it's really, really fun. That's a really good one. But my choice for actually a Metroid-style game is actually here on the screen. It's been playing during our little show tonight, and that's a little-known TurboGrafx Super CD game that not many people talk about.
It would
But
be
it's
on
called,
Turbo.
I know, right? It's Shapeshifter. Actually came out for the Turbo, and it's an open world game that starts off as a very, very linear game, where it starts you in a town. Everybody's like, "Hey, there's this spider in the woods. Help us, help us!" And you're like, "Okay." And so you go off into the woods and you're beating up bad guys, and you end up at the end of the woods and there's this giant spider, and you kill the spider, and then it's kind of like, "You've done it. You've saved us." Awesome, and you can go and do pretty much whatever you want after that. It's a really well done game. The controls are pretty spotty. There's a learning curve to get used to. It's got some clunky controls and action, but otherwise I love this. I love the music. I love the parallax scrolling. It's got good atmosphere. It's a really fun game, and I recommend it. It's a good one. I wouldn't say it's as good as Super Metroid, but it's really fun, and it's a good game to kind of get lost in. It's pretty cool.
I was actually thinking of Cave Story as a Metroid type game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, man.
No, it's all right. I've heard of Axiom Verge too. I watched a bit of a gameplay of it, and I thought, wow, they did a really good job on that. It does remind me of the Metroid look. But
There was a Metroid fan that made a game because he couldn't have a new Metroid.
Yeah,
Nice.
kind of like the remake. I actually found the link for the remake one. I don't know how to post it on here, but I can send it to you on Facebook.
Yeah, I can
The,
put it down in the comments below for when people want to.
yeah. It's the Metroid 2 remake, guy. It's a really interesting game design. But yeah, I've never liked the Metroidvania uh, term. I just use it because I know everyone's familiar with it.
That's what everybody says. Yeah, that's true.
It's just like I remember Metroid being out. I'm like, Metroid. I believe Metroid came out before Castlevania. I might be wrong. I don't really know, but it seemed like why don't you just call it a Metroid game? Because at least it's kind of doing what Metroid does.
Yeah, it was a clever way to kind of say, "Oh, it's a Metroidvania game." Matter of fact, I think one of the more recent copies of Retro Gamer magazine that I've gotten. Actually, it's not Retro Gamer. That's the UK one. This one's just called Retro. It had on the cover. It said Metroidvania games, like the best Metroidvania games, and it was like, "You fuckers!" Like, I can't get away.
Triggered.
I will not get away from this. It's just so annoying, and so I don't know. It's just an irritating term. I don't hate it by any means, but I definitely like. It's like you put that word "vania" at the end of it, and you think that like Konami has invented some amazing gameplay element or something that's awesome, and all they really did was just rip off another company. It's amazing. I remember playing Symphony of the Night the first time, thinking, "How did they get away with this?" It's just Super Metroid with a Castlevania skin. This is really bizarre. But yeah. But anyway.
I actually looked on Steam once trying to find anything that reminded me of Metroid, and when I typed in Metroid, what came up was Metroidvania. I'm like, don't call it that. It's Metroid.
Yeah, people use that as a tag word or whatever to kind of get their name out there if their games play like Metroid at all. But
yeah. I remember looking it up. There was a couple games I saw, and Axiom Verge was one of them, and there was a couple others. I wish I remember these things off the top of my head, but I'm better with pictures than I am with words.
it's all good. But hey, guys, I am very, very happy that we got to chat about this. I thought that this was a very informational and a good opinionated episode of God, I almost said pro wrestling off topic with Zach Hagenbusher and Josh Yeager. I can't believe that. I feel so dumb. Of the Game Hump. Thank you guys everybody for listening. Thank you, Matt and Bo, for being a part of the show. I hope you guys had a good time, and I hope the few viewers that we wound up getting during the show had a good time too. So everybody, thanks, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.
See you, everybody.
See ya.
Bye. Goodbye.